The last survivor of humanity lost the battle, but the gods gave him a second chance to go back 10 years in time so that they could. Weak. With that, he made him a proposition. He wanted him to join him because together, they would conquer other worlds. Saphir asked if he was truly serious. Time passes. Priestess Anna Primrose announces that if anyone needs anything from the store or would like a consultation, they should approach her. One person orders a beer. Another person orders 2 roast potatoes. The merchant says that a glass of beer costs 80 silver coins. Seer thinks that, even after all these years, he still hasn't gotten used to the absurd prices of this place. The boy comes up to him and asks if he can buy him a drink, wondering if he has any money. The boy replies that he just earned a bit, but he can't afford anything expensive. He thanks Saphir for saving him earlier, and adds that, thanks to him, the team placed first. He explains that everyone on the team is weak, and they usually come in last place, and that this was almost the first time they managed to get any money. Saphir now understands why they were chasing the boy. It's because if even one person on the team gets sick and can't work, causes production to drop, and the enemy team's ranking automatically increases. He asks if the boy is joking, but the boy insists that he isn't. You're suggesting a child should pay for it? The boy apologizes, saying he didn't mean to offend him. He thinks to himself that the boy should have intervened sooner, because those guys were a nuisance. He tells the boy not to get any closer because he'll just be in the way, and then he walks away. The shopkeeper greets him and asks what he can get for him. He asks if any recovery water is available. The shopkeeper remarks that he's never seen him around there before, and asks if he's new and if he has. Tartarus confirmed this, saying that the proposal was, of course, not bad. Meanwhile, Sephi reflected. He knew that his body had been completely money. He explains that the water costs 1 gold coin per glass and 4 per bottle, and suggests that it would have been better to wait until he was really in. Wounded, he places a coin on the table, claiming he won 5 gold, and deciding to take out a loan to cover the rest. He asks for the paperwork, observing that the place also offers credit. The merchant seals the documents. The boy approaches, asking if he has gone crazy and wanting to know if he has any idea how terrifying it is to take on more debt. He explains that from their daily salary of 2 coins, they already lose 1 just to pay what they owe. With no income, they'll end up in the red in no time. He tells the little guy to shut up and just drink the recovery water. The boy insists, reminding him that the interest on extra loans is extremely high. Disdainfully, he says, it doesn't matter, stating that he is going to pay everything back. He asks, what did the other person mean by that? He knows that recovery water is popular among temple worshippers because it regenerates a bit of stamina, but what few people realize is that, if ingested in large quantities, it can significantly increase mana. Consider that you would need to consume more than 10 bottles of it once to get a small boost, so it's usually not worth it. However, with the perk he now possesses, the effect is comparable to that of any potion. The system window alerts him. The second perk acquired is Hermes' secret ability, which increases the effectiveness of all potions by 500%. Destroyed in the last battle. Still, Tartarus was offering him a second chance, which seemed suspicious. Distrustful, he realized. The potions. He reflects that earning money solely in the mines is practically impossible, as there are no bonuses for extra effort. After finishing his drink, he starts exercising and wonders what his next step will be. Sometime later, the mining team leader appears, and he asks what's going on, suggesting he may have heard a monster deep within the mine. He steps in front of the man and confirms that he really did hear something. He suggests informing the base team and offers to guide them to the location where the sound originated. He concludes that dungeons are the real place where the money is. He reflected on the fact that monsters emerge due to a distortion of mana. Most of these creatures demonstrated hostility towards humans, which has caused serious disruptions to the population over the years. Despite this, they offered certain opportunities, such as the mana stones formed within their bodies, bones, or hides, which could be used as raw materials for manufacturing. Over time, people began to view monsters as valuable resources. Monster lairs, or dungeons, came to be seen as dangerous treasure troves. Eventually, a specialized hunting team emerged. He viewed them as a division comprised of carefully selected slaves, chosen for their combat skills. Due to the risks they faced when dealing with monsters, this team, that it was not an invitation, but a cruel provocation. He wanted to see him beg and be humiliated. As Tartarus extended his hand, Sephi remembered, received a high base salary, in addition to performance-based bonuses. He was beginning to wonder why, As a professional adventurer, he had been assigned to work in the mines. He believed there must be some hidden reason for it. Sometime later, the shopkeeper interrupted his thoughts. Asking if he was paying attention, the merchant explained that he could not lend him any more money. Sefer then asked if he had exceeded his limit. Diary. The shopkeeper clarified that the maximum allowable value had already been granted to him during that period. Sefer considered that the situation was not favored him, and he concluded that if he wanted more resources, he would have to steal. The priestess Anna Prenose approached and suggested that he could obtain more money if he agreed to sell some of his organs. She explained that the temple was conducting research using fresh organs and was willing to buy them. Sefer asked him to review the documentation. Anna handed him the papers and mentioned that she needed to schedule the operation for the following week. She stated that if he paid the debt before the procedure, he would be able to cancel it. He also guaranteed that the temple was not acting as a usurious moneylender. The shopkeeper then asked whether Sefer had gone crazy at the thought of selling his own organs. Sefer insisted that he wanted more bottles of recovery water. The merchant, he agreed to his request, remarking that, if that was what Sefer wanted, it was his own problem, not anyone else's. He then commented that he was a complete weirdo, or, her words, how she had reprimanded him for being so aggressive. She had cast that silly spell on him, by holding the enemy's hand. An immense, maybe just a tough guy. The shopkeeper mused to himself that yet another man was about to be taken to the laboratory. After receiving the bottles, consumed all the contents, and concluded that he had met the necessary requirements. Shortly after, a hunting team member named B. He approached and asked if he was Sefer, the one responsible for guiding them to the monster. Understanding that the time was right, Sefer confirmed his identity. Gat, then, introduced himself as the head of the recon unit, accompanied by Dale and Marco. He mentioned that he did not possess night vision, but he could use mana detection. He added that it was a pleasure to meet them. He reflected that, although night vision allowed one to see in the dark, mana sensing extended a sensory net that expanded their perception. He believed that these skills were absolutely essential for infiltrating dark dungeons without attract the attention of monsters. Gat figured that would save him the cost of buying a night vision potion, and suggested that if Sefer was ready, they could set off right away. Marco handed some items to Sefer, instructed him to carry them, and told him to come along. Dale remarked that it was interesting to see a miner using mana, and asked if Sefer would lead them through the dungeon. He snapped, with a dry command for him to be quiet. He decided to observe them closely. Two of them were unfamiliar to him, but he recognized one who had been transferred to the home team about a month prior. After, explosion of energy from another dimension was activated. That was his answer. He stood up and insulted Tartarus. At that very moment, a powerful explosion, clearing that dungeon. He concluded that this meant two of those present would likely die on this mission and began to consider how he could use that situation in their favor. Later, they arrived at the dungeon entrance, where they encountered a boy waving to them. The boy held out his hands and tied a thread on Seer's arm, explaining that it was a magical bracelet. He informed them that if anything happened to any of the members, the corresponding bracelet on Sefer's arm would break, allowing them to call for reinforcements from the main base. However, since this was only a reconnaissance mission, everything should go smoothly if they were careful. He wished the group good luck, and they then entered the dungeon. After some time, two monsters appeared inside the cave, holding wooden torches. Hearing a stone fall, they became distracted. Seizing the opportunity, Ga and Dale surprised them from behind, and they eliminated them. Say reflected that the reconnaissance unit's function was to investigate the presence of monsters and gather information about the dungeon. Based on this data, an attack unit would be mobilized to exterminate the creatures using firepower. Normally, that was the standard procedure. Standard. Gat commented that those two monsters seemed like mere stragglers. He added that their habitat was located on the other side of the mine entrance, and that NB's home team had already reported this fact the previous week. Dale added that the survivors of the attack were probably the magic occurred, destroying a portion of the demon lord. Tartarus was shocked and screamed, cursing Sefer and demanding how he dared humiliate him in that way. We're hiding in that area. Say remembered that the recon team was also composed of skilled hunters. B called Dale and Marco, suggesting that they would handle the situation themselves. It was noted that they sometimes preferred to clear the dungeon without external assistance when they felt confident in their abilities. Dale. He argued that their mission was exploration, not taking needless risks, and questioned what their course of action would be if they encountered a large number of monsters or more formidable enemies. He countered that there were 4 of them, not just 3, and that this number would suffice to confront even a kobold. Dale, however, questioned whether Gout was seriously, and asserted that Saphir didn't count, since he was only carrying the equipment. He then questioned how they could possibly clear a dungeon with such a formation. Marco interrupted, suggesting that they consider Saphir's opinion before making a decision. Gath then requested that Saphir reveal what he had brought. Saphir picked up a bag and confirmed that it contained leaves and fruits from the moonbush. When crushed and mixed with cobalt excrement, the moonbush fruit produced a strong odor, so strong that it was reminiscent of a female in heat. The scent was so potent that monsters could detect it from over 300 feet away. One of the monsters smelled the mixture and covered her nose, realizing that she was going to be used as bait. Another monster ran toward the scent and fell directly into the trap. The goat, still injured, watched the scene and muttered that he had already said it would work. Dale called him a genius. With a smile, the goat corrected him, saying, he then delivered a brutal blow against the burning body, which then disappeared. As his last thoughts faded away, Saphir believed that what he meant to say was all the time. Dale, curious, asked how he had thought of bringing that plant, since he had never even heard of it. Gath. He attributed it to experience and maturity. Saphir silently reflected that he was actually the one who had told G about the plant, and he remembered that, in his previous life, before being resurrected and transferred to the home team, he and Gat had worked together in the same unit. He remembered how G always. He sought recognition, but never had the opportunity to achieve it. The scene then returned to the moment before the team's mission, with B asking if everything was clear. Say replied that he had actually already entered and verified the place by himself the day before. He explained that only some cobalt stragglers were left in the surrounding area. Got wanted to know how many lives Say had left. Say revealed that he had been the leader of recon in his old group and possessed a talent, especially for locating things. G asked if he thought the four of them would be able to clear the dungeon alone with that plan. It was mentioned that the decision was up to Gat, but he believed it was worth considering. Splitting up an easy dungeon like that with other teams would be a waste. Gat started to consider that. That guy could be quite useful. He also thought that moonbushes weren't easy to find. He always seemed well prepared and knew a lot about monster hunting. G also liked that he gave her credit without trying to stand out. As head of the unit, a single word to the human resources, that his long fight had finally come to an end. He felt that he had failed to avenge his loved ones and to save humanity, as everyone had expected him to do. Department could transfer him to the hunting team immediately. Gat handed a knife to Saphir and said, "Here, use this." Saphir thanked him. Gat thought he was right, which was probably why that rookie was trying so hard to impress him. It was clear that Saphir was a dedicated worker, but he wasn't desperate, not quite. Beating a small cobalt dungeon wasn't enough to truly impress him, though. Still, in recognition of Saphir's efforts, Gat was pleased to take the credit for clearing that dungeon. The scene then cuts back to the present, where Gouda took down a monster and commented that he had probably already taken care of the situation. Marco also defeated an enemy with his hammer and said he hadn't expected it to be so easy. Gat picked up a stone and lamented that, unfortunately, the mana stones from the kobolds weren't of very good quality. He confirmed that the path ahead was clear. Gat nodded, saying it was time to take care of the rest. Dale interrupted, saying there was something else. A strange thing was there. He found some bones, picked them up, and wondered if they were the remains of a meal or just animal bones. After examining them carefully, he concluded that they appeared to be cobalt bones. Suddenly, the bones moved, grabbing Dale and throwing him to the side. Marco prepared to attack, and he ordered everyone to position themselves behind him. Inwardly, he cursed the situation, believing that it was all over. But now he realized there was something. It had all ended in defeat. However, suddenly and unexpectedly, he was transported to a strange place. When he got up, he noticed that his wounds had more there. Whatever it was, they had to protect themselves. He asserted that his mana shield could withstand even an orc chieftain. Nothing would get through it. However, the bone monster attacked, destroying the shield with a single blow. Marco spat out blood and fell unconscious. Gat was shocked at the sight of the creature's tail. Meanwhile, the bespectacled boy outside noticed that the bracelets on his wrist were starting to break. He remembered the instructions. If anything happened to the NT members, the connected bracelets would also break. 3 of them had broken at the same time. The boy became alarmed, wondering what was happening inside the dungeon. Inside the dungeon, Gat had also been seriously injured. Saphir, on the other hand, was already positioning himself to face the monster. The system activated a window, reporting the activation of an ability called Iron Wall. This skill significantly increased the durability of the tertiary user, canceling out any minor damage and preventing fatigue. Sephi reflected that even with that ability, the monster before him was perhaps too strong. Despite appearing young, likely less than a year old, its strength was formidable. The creature's tail struck Dale, who now understood what they were facing. It was a predator that used pheromones to deceive other monsters, making them believe it was of the same species. Upon reaching maturity, it devoured the monsters that raised it and abandoned the nest. Sile approached Gat and took his spear, asking to borrow it. Watch the show again, since they used humans as entertainment, and they are going to regret it. He comes back swearing to, disappeared, and his armor looked brand new. He looked around, confused, and saw a large statue in front of him, leading him to think that he might be in a temple dedicated to some god. Gat, injured, asked him to wait and inquired about his plan. Sale brandished the spear firmly, feeling that it was finally his, a chance to truly fight. With his magic activated, he declared that he would now allow the monster to choose the weapon with which it preferred to be killed. The window. The system notified him that the third perk was the silver key, capable of opening a door in a forgotten castle. Whoever possessed it could store objects in a silver room, accessible anytime, anywhere. At that moment, the objects were stored in his left hand, and he understood that this essentially functioned as an inventory. By conjuring a cloth and a dragon grass directly from his hand, using the powers of the key, he completely surprised the goat. The system informed him that dragon grass was a natural tonic that calmed the mind. He pushed it aside and tied the cloth to the hand holding the spear, warning that things were about to get intense. The goat, confused, questioned what he was doing, pointing out that he wasn't even a soldier. Say, fully aware of his own mortality, refused to die hiding behind a subordinate like a coward. The monster advanced at the same time he did, as he prepared his attack with the spear. The system window displayed a notification about the use of the fear skill, which was capable of paralyzing enemies with terror. The goat, observing, recalled an old lesson it had heard in its early days of, or perhaps it was the afterlife. Just then, a female voice announced that this place wasn't the underworld, but the lowest level. Service. It vividly remembered a city being attacked by an adult predator, and how everyone there simply stood frozen, unable to even expari, blinking, frozen with fear. There was nothing to do but wait for their turn. In the present, the goat reacted in shock to the sound of the attack. By striking with Saphir's spear, he was trying to understand what was happening, confirming that the effect of fear was being neutralized with effectiveness. Then he spat out the dragon grass. The system reiterated again the calming effect of the tonic, and also revealed the second advantage, the secret skill of Hermes, which increased the effectiveness of any potion by 500%. He reflected that among the 9 advantages, only one was a real weapon. Real, but unfortunately, he still didn't have enough mana to utilize it. For now, he believed it was sufficient to control such a small creature. Taking a bottle of poison from his inventory, he applied it to the spear, recalling his old friend, Fad, the king of poisons, and poison number 68, among the 72 that Fad had created. The scene then cut back to a flashback, where Sile remembered sitting with Fad as he held some papers and asked if he truly wanted to donate them. Fad, having dedicated his life to creating those formulas, saw little point in keeping them in a world on the verge of collapse, preferring they be used rather than wasted. Returning to the present, Sephir pierced the monster with the spear, observing, of the pantheon, where the gods resided. He turned toward the voice, and saw a door glowing. A woman approached as Sephir, surprised. How it screamed in pain. He reflected on the nature of the Vilel poison, made from a common plant, which, once it entered the bloodstream, it corroded his internal organs, causing intense pain. Fat's cruelty was reflected in the formula's sadism. He estimated it would take 3 minutes to completely circulate the poison. All he needed was to hold on until then. He continued attacking with the spear, but the monster flung him away with its tail. Determined, he threw the vial of poison directly into the creature's mouth. The monster vomited blood. There was little time left, maybe 2 minutes. No, just 1. Say recognized that his skills would not be enough for him to escape, so he needed to ensure that the monster fell. He continued stabbing it, even as the creature's tail tried to hit him again. As he grabbed it, he felt that the end was approached. When the tail moved violently, Seph would jump onto the monster, break the spear by stabbing it into the creature's eye, and then use the remaining half to pierce the skull. Then, he took out his knife and plunged it into the monster's second eye, causing it to roar in pain as it grabbed onto the knife to maintain his position. He realized it wasn't over yet. There was still one more strike needed. Straddling the monster, he reflected on the present moment, comparing it with his situation from 10 years ago. He knew that in his current state, he wasn't strong enough to win through brute force alone, which was why he had realized he couldn't summon his sword. She told him not to worry and explained that she was a messenger of the gods named Mercedes, an elite angel, prepared in advance. He recalled the recovery water, generally considered ineffective because it only increased mana when consumed in large quantities. He knew that drinking more than 10 vials at once was necessary to gain even a small benefit, making it impractical. But the potion had the advantage that Hermes became as powerful as any elite potion. The system notified him once again about the 500% increase in effectiveness. Now, with enough mana, it could pierce even the skull of a predator. Charging his spear with mana, he used the basic release technique and then finished off the monster with a decisive attack. Meanwhile, the goat watched, overcome by a memory. He thought that, as the head of the unit, a single word from him to the Human Resources Department would be enough to have Saphir transferred to the home team. He was almost certain that was the reason Saphir was trying so hard was evident. Still, I could see that he was a dedicated worker, but not desperate. I believed that clearing a cobalt dungeon wouldn't be enough to impress him. However, upon further reflection, the goat realized just how wrong he was about that. He didn't need to try so hard to impress him. His talents alone would guarantee recognition. It was only a matter of time until he reached the top. However, at that time he was still just a minor. He couldn't even enter a dungeon on his own, and that's why he needed. She said that he was already dead and would normally be sent straight to the underworld. However, due to the insistence of several, the goats helped to do so. After the battle, Saphir approached and seriously indicated that they needed to talk. After a while, a severely injured, yellow-haired man insists he isn't one of them, swearing he's telling the truth. A black-haired man holds a flaming star moves to attack him, spinning menacingly. The yellow-haired man pleads, remembering when they joined the temple and begging that they believe that he doesn't worship the god of demons. Sahak orders him to be crushed. The black-haired man strikes and kills him. A centipede emerges from the dead body. Sahak attacks it with a magic knife, declaring it's a marked centipede. He stabbed it and claims he knew that fool was a worshipper of Tartarus. After a while, Sahak kneels before the Inquisitor's mobs. They observe that Sahak killed 7 members of the team single-handedly. To capture a rat, questioning whether a 7-to-1 ratio seems rather inefficient, especially given the urgency of the situation. Sahak explains that he understands how these people operate and that they might assume the other unit members have already been converted. With only 1 month until the attack, they will regret it if they don't eradicate the heretics hiding in the temple as quickly as possible. Inquisitor Mouse relents and agrees to smooth things over with the home team, but insists that he expects tangible results in return. He emphasizes that Sahak represents him and must not embarrass him. Sahak, gods, the 3 supreme gods, had decided to send him back in time. Confused, he asked what she meant by that. Mercedes responds affirmatively. Meanwhile, in the Human Resources Department, a short-haired girl says, "Okay, so, Captain Go of the Reconnaissance Unit, please fill out the application form first." He asks if he is the one recommending someone for the transfer, and what the person's name and position are. G responds that it is Saphir from the mining team, who just joined them that week. She recognizes the name and asks for a moment. She explains that, by nominating a member from another department for transfer, that person becomes affiliated with your unit. If the unit's performance decreases due to a mistake made by that person, it could negatively affect your chances for a bonus or promotion. She asks if he accepts those terms. Gat answers affirmatively, thinking that, of course, he would accept. On the other hand, if Saphir performs well, all the credit will go to him. He reflects that life is a matter of luck, and he can't quite believe his good fortune. The scene then shifts to the previous day inside the dungeon. The goat asks what Saphir is talking about, questioning if he wants him to pretend that the entire fight with the predator never even happened. Saphir confirms that is what he wants. The goat, he asks if it's because Saphir wants the monster's bodies. Sephi replies that he only wants the predator and will leave the kobolds behind. He suggests that the goat should tell the superiors that it was just a cobalt lair. The goat reflects that dungeons provide various resources, such as monster corpses, stones, and mana items. He clarified that he would be sent to the past with all his memories intact, thus receiving an opportunity to change his fate. He added, however, that only of mana, but the temple slaves aren't allowed to keep any of them. All a warrior slave on the hunting team can hope for is a reward for clearing the dungeon and a bonus that varies depending on the value of the loot obtained. He mentions that he could earn significantly more money if he sold the items to a corridor. The goat replies that this is impossible because there is a monitoring unit stationed outside to prevent such actions. He adds that even if they were to make a deal, the tracking unit would come and inspect the area for any items. Saphir agrees, and then proposes an alternative solution. He places his hand on the monster and claims that there was something there previously, but it's gone now. He applies magic and transfers the monster to his inventory. The goat is shocked by what he witnesses, and he thinks he can't believe it. Most inventories can hold a few items, but he just made that enormous monster disappear. Monster. Even the blood on the ground vanished. He asks Saphir if he wants a promotion. The scene cuts back to the present, where he contemplates clearing 3 more dungeons for Saphir. More dungeons for Saphir. He can split the loot between them and, in exchange, keep the monster. The goat reflects that the number of dungeons cleared each quarter, and especially the number of battles fought, have a significant impact on promotion evaluations. Even lower-level dungeons, such as lower level, like kobold lairs, are taken into account. He acknowledges that, as a reconnaissance unit, they don't engage in many battles, which is why his memory would be preserved. His physical training, mana, and other acquired abilities would not be restored. Still, because he's been stuck as a unit leader for the past 3 years. However, with someone as powerful as Saphir on his team, everything is different. He realizes that the starting the Beso, the reconnaissance unit, being the first to enter the dungeons, can claim them for themselves, without interference from anyone, if they manage to clear a certain number. Dungeons with only a small group, that will make him look good as a unit leader, increasing his chances of promotion. Saphir wants money. He is a good businessman. All they need to do is be careful not to get caught. If he gets a good price for the predator, he could easily pay his debt. He would like to leave the temple immediately, but there is still something he needs to do there. He knows that the temple knights are preparing for a major attack in about a month. During that attack, they will discover an item that will cause a sensation throughout the land. He believes that he must participate in the attack no matter what, and he is determined to obtain that item in order to change the future. After a while, Gat announces that registration has been completed, and that Saphir is now officially a member of the home team. He hands him his identification tag and instructs him to take it to the arsenal in order to receive his basic equipment. Saphir reflects on his past life, remembering that he had joined the home team after the list of participants had already been announced, which meant he missed the attack. He knows that only 20 people from the home team are selected, so he figures that he must be the most powerful human in the world. She believed he would be able to recover them quickly. He wondered if he was dreaming, or if that vision had been exceptionally talented or have influential connections to have been chosen. He considers his plan, pondering when he will be able to execute it. Gat mentions that Saphir, you will find a line of people on the first floor of the arsenal building, which he will head to next. He adds that he plans to visit the hospital, briefly to make sure Dale and Marco are receiving the appropriate treatment for their injuries, and he asks if Saphir needs him to retrieve any belongings. Then Sahak arrives with his men. Gut sees them, places his hand on Saphir's head, and tells him to lower his head. They move forward, and Gut explains that those are official agents of the Inquisitor, slaves who work directly for him. He advises Saphir to treat them as superiors, and not as fellow slaves. Since they have the authority to attack anyone they deem a heretic and punish them without a trial. Some people were taken away simply because colliding with them, or for not addressing them in the proper manner. He highlights Sahak, describing him as the mad dog who joined the Inquisitor's team of agents, with the sole purpose of killing people. Once he sets his eyes on someone, he never lets them escape. Everyone should be careful around him. Sahak interrupts, pointing at Saphir and saying that Saphir was present. Bot looks at Zook and wonders if he heard correctly. He apologizes for a moment, stating that something is bothering him. He introduces Saphir as a minor and himself as Sahak, an agent of the Inquisitor. Gat asks Saphir to state his name and, induced by Tartarus. Or perhaps it was just an hallucination caused by his impending death. Curious, he asked why she was granting him a second position. He further clarifies that Saphir has just been transferred to their team and assures Sahak that, as the team leader, he will take care of any problems that arise. Sahak orders him to be quiet, stating that he didn't ask him anything. He considers the murderous aura emanating from Zephyr, and this confirms his suspicions. He can feel them just by Zephyr standing there. He thinks most people wouldn't notice it, but he has the keen sense of a bloodhound. This guy is genuinely powerful. He observes that Zephyr is dressed as a miner, but was recently transferred to the home team, indicating that he previously was on the mining team. Sahak recalls how new slaves are assigned to workstations after completing aptitude tests, including physical and mana tests. Those with combat skills have the opportunity to demonstrate their capabilities, as the home team always needs capable individuals. However, someone as strong as Saphir was initially assigned to the mining team and only later transferred to the home team. Sajhak observes official inquisitors and unusual agents surrounding Saphir, believing they can handle him despite his strength, and he instructs them to allow him to ask some questions, warning Saphir to answer truthfully while he thinks about Sahak, wondering who Sahak thinks he is, and how Sahak is making everything easier for himself. Sahak insists on obtaining permission to ask some questions, firmly stating that Saphir should tear everyone to pieces in this damn show called the Reincarnation Battle Against the Gods. The story begins with everything chance. Mercedes acknowledged that it was hard to believe and offered to give him proof. He rejected it, preferring to trust her, but then asked what. Answer them honestly, and that he shouldn't even consider lying. He then asks if Saphir has heard of Tartarus, and it's clear that Saphir recognizes the name. Immediately, he knew the name, revealing his deep knowledge of the subject. He is well aware of the Tartarus worshippers, a group devoted to the god of demons, and understands the crucial role they play better than anyone. These devotees are primarily responsible for the betrayal against humanity in the imminent Great War, an event that will result in the fall of civilization. However, at this present time, people of lower rank still see them only as a fringe cult that opposes the orthodox religion. Sahak explained that there were several distinct characteristics that differentiated the Tartarus worshippers from others, and he claimed to possess a special talent for identifying them. It was this ability that led him to secure employment under the orders from Inquisitor Matus. According to him, his intuition told him that Sephi posed a threat, so he pointed a knife in his direction and announced then that he would begin the interrogation as the Inquisitor's official agent, warning Sephi that every word spoken and every action taken by her could be used against her. Before being questioned, Sephi asked for permission to ask a question. One of the Inquisitor's agents considered this to be an arrogant attitude, but Sahak allowed him to proceed. Sephi requested that they move to another location, explaining that there were too many people watching and, I expected something in return. He stated that nothing in the world was free, and he figured that I was only offering him a new opportunity because I wanted something from him. If that assumption, that she didn't want to humiliate Sahak in public, which could put him in an embarrassing situation. Sahak, incredulous at the suggestion, reacted. Asking what Saphir had just said, he remarked that Saphir was certainly very conceited. He wanted to know if Saphir actually believed he could defeat all 5 of them by himself. Dismissing the concern, Sahak declared that teaching arrogant people like Saphir a lesson was more worthwhile, and then he launched into an attack. They conjured a magic circle that surrounded Saphir. The system window notified them that the red skill field increased the stats of all allies within it as long as it remained active. The boost effect was amplified depending on the number of casters involved. However, the ability was only active as a team skill due to the caster's limited understanding of it. Saphir thought that would be interesting and decided to continue with the fight. Sahak observed that Saphir was standing in a strange position, resembling a martial arts stance, and decided to simply wait and see what he would do. However, unlike most, he decided to attack immediately. Sahak considered himself invincible within the red camp. Saphir. He blocked the attack and attempted to counterattack. He crouched down and struck Sahak's leg, believing he had landed a hit. However, the blow had no effect, leading him to wonder if Sahak's leg was made of steel. Saphir then unleashed a series of powerful punches, leaving Sahak. It was correct, he thought to himself. Then it all made sense. He recalled the moment when the god of destruction invaded Earth and the massacre began. The unconscious goat alerted Saphir to look to the right. A black-haired boy hurled a star-shaped object in their direction. Saphir. He tried to block with his arm, but the boy twisted the chain again, preparing for another attack. She commented that she didn't know he could talk and suggested he should do it more often, thinking he was just a pet. That he should do it more often, since she thought he was just a pet. The boy threw the mass again, causing the ground to break apart. The people around them warned about stones flying everywhere. One of them shouted for everyone to be careful. Goat thought the boy was terrifying. He knew that Saphir was strong since he saw him fight in the dungeon, but he was surprised to see him defeat Shak in just a few seconds using a new martial art. Furthermore, The tall man's mass seemed to have a will of its own as it tore through the ground. Upon observing carefully, he noticed that Saphir completely avoided her. A Saphir, goat, wondered what would happen if Saphir actually managed to defeat them. Sahak would be so humiliated that he wouldn't even be able to request a warrant. Arresting officer. Goat believed that if Saphir defeated them, there wouldn't even be an interrogation. However, if Saphir were to lose, he would be blamed by association, like unit leader. That's why he hoped Saphir would win. A yellow-haired man commented that Saphir's time was running out. Goat asked what he meant by that. The man explained that although Saphir was fighting well and dodging the attacks, several minutes had already passed. He grabbed the chain of people desperately prayed for help, but the gods simply turned their backs on them. They ignored all of their pleas and wouldn't even accept any more. The mass and noticed a magical light surrounding it. He thought about how the red field was still active. The black-haired boy tried to pull the chain with his power. At the same time, Sahak seized the opportunity to attack him from behind with a sword. Saphir concluded that his enemies were growing stronger over time. Sahak declared that the game was over. He ordered Saphir to prepare himself, because he would regret not having begged for imprisonment from the very beginning. As he ran in to attack, his hand was caught by a chain, and he began to be struck repeatedly. Sahak couldn't even see the attacks clearly. He claimed that his stats were 80% higher than normal, and that Saphir had no chance against such speed. He screamed for him to die, calling him a miserable idiot while laughing. Then he slammed the chains against his head with both hands, smashed his face into the ground, and yanked his hair. He questioned if they didn't know how to work as a team and need him in the head. SAP concluded that even with increased speed and defense, for the red field, it wasn't enough against Saphir. He admitted that he had underestimated the granuloma. If he truly wanted to show off his speed, he should have used someone with greater stamina. The black-haired boy became enraged, called Saphir a cat, and demanded that he come closer, grabbing the chain and launched it against him. Sayer commented on the situation with irony, observing that the boy was built like a tank, but insisted on using chains instead of fighting in offerings. He remarked on how they stripped the priests, who depended on divine energy to fight, of their power. Without the ability to heal or defend themselves, the melee combat. He thought that if his former subordinates had made such serious mistakes, he would have beaten them himself. Taking advantage of the increase in dollars, using the power of his basic magic skill, he pulled the chain, causing the mass to fall to the ground. Everyone was shocked by the scene. Sajak tried to get up, but he was defeated again. In anger and humiliation, he asked who Saphir was. Saphir replied that he thought Sahak was an interrogator, and asked if that was everything he had to say. Coldly, he said that Sajak had no right to know his identity and began to walk away. From the window, Nadestrier observed everything. He found it incredible and wondered if Saphir had been sent by his master. One person asks what had happened, another says he can't believe it. Sajak had lost. He tries to get up and says that he will kill him. Saphir thinks he is a sore loser and considers that he has completed the first part of his plan. The only question now is when he will hear about it, but it's only a matter of time. Suddenly, he sits on the ground and realizes he can't move a single muscle. He feels completely exhausted, and his entire body aches. It must be mana freeze. The system notifies him that mana freeze is a temporary pain and a feeling of exhaustion that occurs when a mana user runs out of energy. He concludes that the ability consumed his mana faster than he thought it would. Even with all those increases in his mana level, his body from human army collapsed almost immediately. The gods had decided that there was nothing more to gain in that world, and therefore, they abandoned it, he observed. 10 years ago, isn't that strong? He thinks that if he doesn't do something about it, the debt collection will begin. At that moment, a spirit appears in front of him and announces its arrival. In the name of Lord Asra, the great god of debt, your mana reserve has reached 0, and the collection for the Wall of Iron skill will now begin. Saphir realizes that this skill not only serves to increase defense and resistance, but also that any fatigue and damage sustained during its use will be stored as debt. Thus, when the mana runs out, all the accumulated damage is felt at once. He knows that many adventurers use this ability to attempt to conquer higher-level dungeons, only to end up bankrupt or dead in the process. It's a double-edged sword, typical of Asra, the god of debt, a deity who feeds on human desperation on the brink of destruction. He thinks the spirit was drooling as it observed him. Fight that greedy idiot. The spirit uses its power and announces that the damage assessment is complete, then starts the countdown. Saphir feels his body growing heavier and heavier, but he needs to do something and can't move. He tears one of his gloves, sees a small bottle, and calls it his emergency recovery water. Emergency recovery water. The spirit continues the countdown and announces, 1. Saphir drinks the recovery water. The spirit throws its great bell at him and announces that the user has recovered 1 point of mana, canceling the debt collection countdown. It adds that the debt will be collected at a later date and that those calculating beings would never give anything away for free. She answers yes, adding that she will let the gods speak for themselves and that they simply want to see something. Disappears. Saphir laughs and tells Usra that he underestimated him, asking if he really thought he wouldn't have prepared for this. He considers himself a survival expert. Having stayed alive for an entire year, even after the destruction of humanity, avoiding Usran's collection is nothing, really. If you manage your mana well, Iron Wall is a completely safe and effective skill. In his previous life, it was worth around 500 gold. Skills were always expensive, and this one was especially popular among berserkers. Either way, it's far more than he can afford right now. He raises his middle finger to the sky and sarcastically gives thanks. Usra becomes irritated seeing that. After a while, Saphir wakes up in a room, and he asks if he fainted and where he is. Priestess Ana Primos is nearby and informs him that he is awakened. She asks if he slept well. He is seen tied to a bed, with several weapons surrounding him. She questions what he's doing. She apologizes, remarking that he must be surprised to wake up in a new place, and reassures him. He says they are in his workshop. He comments that he must have been exhausted, as he was sleeping soundly, and informs him that the deadline for the first loan he took out at the store expired an hour ago. She asks if he's crazy. She picks up a knife, saying she's worried about the risks he took, making secured loans and not paying the interest on time. At this point, it seems he has no intention of paying. She brings the knife close to his eye, a little more entertaining. He asks, "What do you mean by that?" She explains that the gods observing him were disappointed when they witnessed his death, demands he tell her whether or not he intends to pay off the loans. Saphir realizes that he had completely forgotten he owed them money. If he uses mana now, Ususra, he will return to collect the debt once again. He'll have to talk his way out of this situation. He insists that he will receive his reward for his victory in the fire dungeon next week and asks him to wait until then. She replies that they will, of course, but questions him about the daily loans made at the store and the unpaid interest. She asks how he plans to pay the accrued interest until he receives his reward, commenting that the dungeon was just a cobalt lair. Would that even be enough? She asks him what he's going to do and suggests cutting out his organs. He immediately calls his subordinates, who confirm and approach to cut his ropes. She holds a large knife and positions his hand on the table. She states that, for now, they will only cut a finger. Does he really think that showing them a missing finger will make them take the temple seriously? Saphir asks them to wait and tries to recall something. She orders them to stop the cutting. The subordinate raises the knife to attack, but stops just before it reaches his finger. She also tells them to wait and thinks to herself, calling him an idiot. He demands to know what he just said. Who the hell does he think he is? His subordinate asks what's wrong. He orders them both to leave. They ask what is happening. He repeats the order, telling them to get out of here. He acknowledges the order and comments to the other that he is. It is extremely rare for a human facing certain death to demonstrate such strong willpower and resilience. The gods remained, until the very end, annoyed, suggesting that they should leave. She demands that Saphir tell the truth and asks him how he knows that name. Saphir responds by asking how he wouldn't know it. Someone as famous as her sister? Or, more accurately, monster racer W. Rose Sephi reflects on how Ana Primrose, a nun of the Temple of Light, is also a W. Rose, a dealer involved with monster items, stolen goods, and the criminal underworld, considers it foolish to enter a dungeon with the cheap equipment available to the hunting party. Therefore, he plans to make a deal with her to acquire better items. He explains that he was actually on his way to see her. He thanks her for picking him up and asks if she can untie him. He first adds that it doesn't seem appropriate to talk business, while lying down, and proposes a more productive arrangement. Meanwhile, Sahak wakes up in his room and throws his food in a fit of anger. A nurse asks. He calms him down and reminds him that he needs to rest. He remembers Saphir asking him if that was all, as if implying that he didn't have the right to know more. Sajak curses at him and demands to know how he dares to act that way. He declares that he will kill that idiot, even if it's the last thing he does. Netter enters the room and asks what is happening, questioning who is causing such a commotion at the hospital. Sahak greets him and wishes him good night. Net reassures him, saying that he is fine and doesn't need to get up. He orders the healers to withdraw as he will take care of Sahak himself. They obey and leave. Net mentions that, deeply impressed with his ability to withstand the vast army of demons for 5 long years. His struggle was fascinating to watch. She continues, he heard that Sahak had a small accident. Sahak apologizes, admitting that he made a mistake, but insists that there is nothing to worry about. He brings a knife to his mouth and asks, what does Net mean by saying there's nothing to worry about? He mentions that everywhere he goes, everyone has been talking about it all night long. Still, he assures them that there is no reason to be alarmed. He explains that Inquisitor Mata always told him to never do anything that would embarrass him, yet Sahak was beaten in front of all those slaves like a stray dog. He grabs a knife and states that he was only given freedom because they had such high hopes for him. When he discovered the first Tartarus worshipper, they thought he had a special gift. He asks if he knows how many Tartarus worshippers he has hunted in the last 6 months, including the first one. Sajak claims that there have only been 2. He recognizes that his superiors are beginning to doubt his abilities. They are tired of tolerating his nonsense, and now he has disgraced the title of agent. Sa kneels and begs for one more chance, promising that he will do whatever it takes. He states that he must first make things right by killing the guy who humiliated him. Then he will decide what to do. He believes that if he cannot accomplish even that, he will no longer be worthy of wearing the red agent uniform. He throws a package in front of Ned and orders him to use it. Sa sees some magical objects and identifies them as belonging to worshippers of Tartarus. Ned mentions that, destroyed while the horned guy used his sword against the protagonist. He was on the ground because the world had come to an end. 1 year later, stating that many gods felt sadness seeing him depart from the world so soon. She asks him to remember how he seemed to become luckier as they were in the room of that worshipper that Shaq captured, and leaves it up to him to decide whether he should use them or not, adding that Sa has nothing to lose. After all, either way, he advises him to make his choice without remorse if he leaves the room. He considers Seek, the mad dog, the common enemy of all the slaves of the No Home team, who has killed 26 slaves in the temple in the last 6 months. Returning to slavery now would mean certain death at the hands of the group. He grabs the magic sphere and thinks that there's no way things are going to start getting better for him. He has worked too hard to escape the misery of being a slave and won't let it all end like this. That idiot is going to die, not him. Meanwhile, Ned instructs a guard to keep an eye on Shaq and make sure that he doesn't do anything stupid. The guard agrees to this. Ned observes that people must know their place or they will be discarded, just like him. He asks about him. He notes his talent and comments that the fool has no idea he only served as a distraction. The guard mentions that, thanks to Shaq's antics, the boss of the Temple Knights lowered their guard. Net plans to infiltrate the Knights' attack and intercept the object in the process. He intends to eliminate the head of the Knights within the dungeon, allowing the Tartarus worshippers to take control of the third parish of the Temple of Light. He believes this mission will change the destiny of the Tartarus worshippers and won't allow anyone to ruin their plans. He agrees to investigate Saphir. The end was approaching. She explains that this happened because the gods decided to offer her support, even paying the karmic price for it. Filled with anger, he considers that Saphir was using martial arts techniques that only the master and his disciples know. If the master sent him to help them, then why? Why didn't he approach her in his usual manner? Does he think Saphir is suspicious? He's planning to use Sahak to test him, fearing Saphir might leak information about them if he's not careful. He decides that if Saphir isn't on their side, they'll simply get rid of him. Meanwhile, Anna examines the monster's corpse and thinks she can't believe it. She thought it was just an attic, but look at that. She wonders if he liked it. She asks if he's joking and says that he loved it. Afterwards, he states that he wants to make sure everything is all right anyway. The system window displays the items available for sale. A predator corpse with N mana stones, a brain, and some damaged bones. The items available for purchase are 5 advanced divine enchantments. A miraculous healing rosary, a salamander stone, a silver alchemy set, the rental of a blessed sun herb and a blessed moon herb, a horn, and so on. He points out that there's nothing on the list he can't acquire for her. The problem is the money. These items cost 5. In total, 3 more predators are needed. He says it's no problem and that he will bring them to her in 3 weeks. He asks her to have everything ready by then, but before that, needs one more favor from her. After a while, Saphir sat down with Kabra and the other group members. Kabra, seeking to create a more welcoming atmosphere, casts a magic spell against her and demands to know if that's all they care about. She dodges the attack with ease. He accuses them of treating his, commented that everyone already knew each other, but suggested they reintroduce themselves for the benefit of the new member. He started by introducing Marco, referring to him like oil for the unit. Marco responded cordially, showing his pleasure in meeting Sephir. Next, Cabra mentioned Dale, pointing out that he had only been with them for 3 months, but he was already proving himself to be an excellent swordsman. Finally, he introduced Sephir as the newest and most promising member of the team. With an enthusiastic gesture, Cabra encouraged everyone to make a toast, raising their glasses high. Meanwhile, Sephir observed the group with a certain curiosity, wondering why there was so much tension in the air. In his opinion, everyone should be more relaxed. After all, he had been sent to help them. Although he maintained a serious expression, he admitted that the food wasn't really worthy of a celebration, but considering everyone's debts, it was the best they could do. Before the atmosphere could cool down any further, Sephir discreetly asked to speak, pulled out a hidden bottle, and in a straightforward tone, he declared that he didn't usually drink horse urine. Everyone was visibly happy to see the bottle, and began asking where he had obtained it. He claimed he had acquired it from Wit Rose, a luxury drink that most slaves could only dream of purchasing. He then suggested that everyone take a drink and proposed a toast to their future collaboration. Cabra commented that he already knew what kind of person Sephir was, a genuinely nice guy, and everyone, desperate fight for survival as mere entertainment, as if all his suffering was just for the divine amusement of the gods. He asks if that is, filled their glasses. Sephir saw it as a beneficial exchange. He would help improve the group's reputation, while they would help him steal corpses, monsters. Whether they liked it or not, everyone was involved from that point on, especially after the attack occurred. He reflected on how, in his past life, he had already been part of the same unit as Cabra, which was why he knew him so well. All he needed to do was guide him, since the other 2 members had not been alive during that era and, therefore, were still unknowns to him. He wondered if they would cooperate or if he would have to eliminate them, but he believed he would have the answer to that question soon. He figured that people helped those who offered them what they wanted: money to the greedy, success to the ambitious, and power to those who craved importance. He thought it would be enough to strengthen them a little, although he knew there was always at least one annoying exception in any group, and he wasn't the type to tolerate such individuals, people he didn't like. Dale, on the other hand, watched him with distrust and concluded that he didn't like the guy at all. The scene then shifted to a flashback in which Goat was conversing with Dale and Marco. Goat emphasized the importance of the current mission for the group. At that time, he was on the 4th level, while Marco and Dale were on the 5th level. As they well knew, even a single level up drastically altered the way that others treated them. That is why he requested their cooperation and asked that they treat Sphere with kindness. Marco mentioned that it still seemed incredible to him that the rookie, really what they believe, if they think the purpose of humans is only to entertain bored gods, she uses her magic to attack him, forcing him to, had saved them, and that Goat had made a deal with him. Dale acknowledged that, as the unit leader, it was Goat's decision, but questioned whether or not it was. They should have been consulted beforehand. Cabra admitted that he also wondered if Sephir had fabricated the entire story, taking advantage of his vulnerability to deceive him. However, he dismissed the notion that a rookie could defeat a predator alone, deeming it absurd. He then questioned, who else could have done that? He warned that if anyone discovered the deal, they could end up imprisoned or even executed for trafficking monster corpses. Marco placed a finger over his lips, asking for silence, as someone might overhear them. He recalled that Sephir was already part of the unit, and that they had agreed to divide the rewards into 3 parts. He suggested that they wait and see how the situation would unfold. The scene returned to the present. Dale even considered the suggestion of waiting to see what would happen, but he quickly dismissed it, believing his companions were naive. In his opinion, Cabra didn't know what he was doing, and Marco only sympathized with Sephir because of the drink he had brought, refusing to accept him into the group, since he was convinced he knew how to identify problems. He reflected that if Marco had been deceived, everyone would soon realize that speaking loudly wasn't enough to survive in that profession. After all, they were a team that invaded dungeons to make a living. Kneel, she warns that he should show respect, as the gods are watching. Leaning in close to him, she states that he has misunderstood and needs. After a while, the group began to move toward the cavern, thinking about Aaron, an underground city that had been carved into the side of a mountain centuries ago. Marco commented that he didn't know a place existed, only 2 days' journey from the temple. Dale asked him with interest if people actually were living in caves. Cabra explained that the interior was even more fascinating, with living rooms, bedrooms, kitchens, and even guest rooms. Therefore, people sent on missions by the temple or travelers seeking healing often stayed at the edges of the city. He remembered being there when he was still a rookie. Marco joked that Cabra should have taken them there back then, not now, when the place was already infested with monsters. They entered the cave and saw cobwebs scattered all around. His magical ability activated, and he reflected on the perception of mana, a technique that heightened his sensitivity by enveloping his body in mana or spreading it across the ground, allowing him to detect the outlines of objects, movements, and especially the presence of mana, as if he were physically touching the targets. Following, with the group, he spotted a black steel spider. Then, they sat down on the ground to discuss the situation. Dale asked if he was really there, and Saphir confirmed, saying that he had found traces at the entrance. He then began to explain the plan. They would avoid the spider webs and continue onward to the hole. To be corrected, he is the only human that the gods found interesting, as they never cared about a common and boring species like humans. She grabs where the baby spiders would be located. Drawing a diagram in the dirt, he continued, explaining that they would pour a paralyzing drug into the area and wait for a blind minute, and they would eliminate everyone. He added that he would have to keep his mana perception active during that time, which would be difficult to do. However, since the spiders slept during the day, it would be enough to approach them carefully. Dale suggested waiting a minute, observing that the problem wasn't the difficulty of the plan itself, but the type of enemy they would face. He claimed that if it really was a black steel spider, the four of them wouldn't stand a chance on their own. He explained that this type of monster possessed a shell as resistant as steel, impenetrable by swords, in addition to having powerful attacks. The worst thing, however, was their accelerated reproduction, capable of forming an army in a short amount of time. He claimed that attacking a nest of black steel spiders was even riskier than facing a fully grown predator. In that way, he suggested reporting the dungeon to the temple, or at least seeking reinforcements from the team. Saphir agreed, saying that it was a good suggestion. However, he added that if he didn't believe he could handle the situation, he was welcome to stay outside. He claimed that he could clear the dungeon alone. Either way, Dale wasn't expecting that response, but it only reinforced his suspicions that Saphir was a fraud. He reflected that he hadn't witnessed Saphir confront the Predator or the inquisitorial agent Sahak. Now he stated his face and emphasizes that if he wants anything from the gods, whether for himself or for his entire species, he needs to prove that he is worthy of their time, because nothing in the world he could defeat a nest of black steel spiders alone. None of that made sense to Dale. He thought that if someone really had that level of power, they wouldn't. He would be in a unit like theirs, and he concluded that the dungeon probably wasn't as dangerous as Saphir claimed. He believed that Saphir was just trying to scare them so they wouldn't accompany him. Determined to see how far Saphir would take this act, Dale decided to observe him. Suddenly, his hand was caught in a spider web. Surprised, he tried to free himself, but it wouldn't budge. Soon he saw several spiders approaching and was shocked to see one of them jump towards him. He sensed the danger and concluded that it was time to act. He quickly grabbed Dale to save him. He moved forward to attack the creature, but another spider jumped onto his arm and began biting him. Seer, surprised to see that the enemies couldn't sink their teeth into him, wondered what was wrong. Without hesitation, he unleashes a mana charge strike, instantly eliminating them. Dale, stunned by the scene, quickly orders everyone to gather together. The group huddles together as the spiders surround them and advance to attack. To Dale, this clearly seemed like a trap. After all, inside a dungeon, you can never foresee what's coming next. Knowing this, he considers the possibility that if they have to fight, then so be it. He remembers giving. He had given a cloak to Marco, instructing him to cover the hammer with it. He also instructs one of the goat-like members to do the same with their weapons, using their own cloaks. Is free. She adds that there was another who strongly advocated for his resurrection, but for a different reason. Meanwhile, Tartarus attacks the angels, himself with their weapons, using their own cloaks. He explains that most swords are ineffective against spiderwebs, which is why they should wrap their weapons with the cloaks to break through. Marco follows the instruction, and upon destroying one of the cobwebs with his covered hammer, he realizes that the strategy works. Although the web adheres to the weapon, it isn't strong enough to stop him from continuing to swing the hammer. While eliminating some spiders, the goat-like creature becomes frightened when it notices the sheer number surrounding them. Dozens, hundreds perhaps, countless. Dale, for his part, also launches into the attack, angrily yelling at them to get out of the way, calling the creatures disgusting little things. During the fight, One of the spiders manages to wound his arm, opening a cut. Despite this, he maintains his focus and encourages the others to hurry. He remembers, having warned them that he would take care of the situation once all the monsters were gathered around. He keeps his promise and launches into the attack. After a period of intense combat, the group manages to eliminate all the spiders. The goat-like creature asks if they were able to finish with all of them. Dale sits holding his injured arm, assessing that the cuts are deep. He reflects that he shouldn't have underestimated her and regrets not having been able to deal with it. He feels only shame upon realizing that he is depending on someone else to help him. Saphir hands him a, claiming to be tired of waiting, and demands to see the person responsible immediately. An angel tries to intervene, begging him to wait, as his request is still a bottle of recovery water, recommending that he drink it. She explains that it is a mixture of healing water with medicinal herbs, functioning as a potion, improvised. Dale begins to suspect that Saphir knew exactly what was happening throughout the entire confrontation. As his perception of mana, it seemed much broader and more precise than anyone else's present. That leads him to believe that Saphir probably also noticed that he was the first to fall into the cobwebs. He wonders if he will be reprimanded for it. Saphir, however, comments that everyone makes mistakes, and the important thing is not to repeat them. He recalls that in his previous life, he trained many inexperienced warriors. Most of them failed to evolve, even with detailed instructions. But Dale had been different, maintaining total focus during the explanations. In Saphir's eyes, he belongs to the type of person who only learns, facing situations head-on, since words alone are not enough. Even though he senses Dale's distrust, he believes that eventually, from the dungeon, he will have to choose between fleeing like a coward or accepting Saphir's leadership. In the next fight, Saphir attacks a large spider with the body of a goat, and he confirms that their strategy worked. The paralyzing drug made them slower. Dale pierces one of them with his sword and remembers Saphir's advice, observing that the lower part of their bodies is more vulnerable. He acknowledges that Saphir was right about everything, from the monster's habits and weaknesses. Having lost the war against the demons, most of the humans disappeared, and the survivors were captured and used as being processed. Tartarus interrupts him, ordering the angel to be quiet. He asserts that he has conquered 10 worlds, and it is impossible that a mere human could have caused him harm. To the most efficient way to defeat them. That level of precision makes Dale wonder how anyone could have access to so much information. Intrigued, he begins to question who this highly skilled man really is. Meanwhile, he continues fighting, slicing through the abdomen of another spider. The goat-like creature quickly understands the method and confirms with a simple understood. Marco, now enthusiastic, expresses his admiration, saying that Saphir is impressive. Dale comments that after that, everything became easier. Saphir praises the group, stating that they made a good start, and sits among the bodies of the defeated spiders. Dale is surprised when he realizes the effort required to defeat just one large spider. The goat reflects on the absurd number of spiders that Saphir managed to defeat all by himself. Saphir suggests that they take a short break to rest and asks the goat to get the food back. She accepts with a simple okay and starts eating. Marco, curious, asks Saphir what area he worked in previously. Saphir answers that he was an adventurer. Marco continues by asking if he had belonged to a large guild or trained with any renowned master. Dale also shows interest, pondering Saphir's mysterious past. Without giving many details, Saphir comments that now only the boss room remains. Marco reacts enthusiastically, saying, "That's great." The goat asks what they should do next. In response, Saphir cuts off the leg of a. He demands that the record of that event be erased and that Saphir disappear immediately, stating that he doesn't care about the karma he'll have to pay. Spider splits the bone and improvises a weapon with it. He states that everyone has fulfilled their roles well so far, but from this point on, he needs them to leave the rest to him. The others are shocked upon hearing those words. The goat reflects on the last 4 years he spent on the hunting team. During that time, many companions lost their lives, but he was fortunate enough to survive. However, that survival wasn't just mere chance. He always chose the safest routes and faithfully followed the orders of his superiors, avoiding unnecessary risks. He remembers Dale commenting that it would be a waste to share a dungeon as easy as that one with other people. Meanwhile, Marco observes that he didn't expect everything to be so simple. Remembering the moment they found a stone goat, he laments that the stone monsters weren't more valuable, since they were only cowards. He attributes his lack of promotion to that, although it doesn't bother him. For him, risking his life isn't worth it. Sephir announces that he fulfilled his part of the deal and demands that everyone leave. The goat realizes that Sephir intended to face the dungeon boss alone from the very beginning. He figures that, in fact, they wouldn't be of much help, so it would be best to let him act freely. He nods resignedly, accepting the decision. Marco, however, suggests that since everyone is already there, they could accompany Sephir in this final stage. After all, there's no point in simply leaving. The goat. Mercedes shows Sephir everything through a magic mirror, as he watches, intrigued by what Tartarus is doing. She explains that Tartarus is the god of, wonders what Marco meant by that. Dale, on the other hand, agrees with the idea, stating that they would have a better chance if they worked as a team. The goat thinks to himself that Dale needs to recover quickly, realizing that there are only two of them, and he would die if Dale doesn't. He was learning to recognize his own limitations. He looks at Sephir, wondering if he should try to convince him to prevent the others from coming along. Without, however, Sephir clarifies that there was a misunderstanding. He didn't tell them to rest. He told them to leave, because he now intends to assign roles to each. 1. The goat feels insecure about the new situation, silently disagreeing with the decision. After a while, Sephir advances further, deep into the cavern. Looking down, he concludes that he has finally reached the heart of the dungeon. He observes that the Spider Queen is in the process of, he disobeys. A large spider protects the place, and he recognizes it as a nocturnal spider protecting the nest. He knows that the Spider Queen is the true leader of the Emidang lair, and that he will not be able to advance silently for much longer. Nocturnal spiders rarely move from their positions, functioning as passive sentinels that block any intruder. Using his magic inventory, he retrieves a silver key and some common flux. He also takes a bag of flour and throws it in the direction of the Spider Queen. Then, he wields his crossbow and fires an arrow. Upon impact, an explosion occurs. He thinks that even a small destruction and has already annihilated 10 worlds, including his own. His goal is to destroy as many worlds as possible, and he has never lost a fight. Spark in that dust cloud is enough to start a chain reaction between the particles, which is known as a dust explosion. He runs immediately. Knowing that it wouldn't be enough to eliminate his enemies, the Spider Queen begins to chase him, firing another arrow while thinking that they are poisoned arrows. Poisoned. A system notification appears, informing him that he used the 68th Belil poison out of the 72 deadliest poisons created by Fad, the king of poisons. The substance causes extreme pain, but even so, the spiders continue to pursue him. The scene then transitions to a flashback, where he holds a sack with cobwebs and explains that they are from a black steel spider, capable of being squeezed to produce even more threads. The goat asks if those cobwebs would work against other spiders. Sephir confirms, explaining that without the special fluid secreted by their legs, even spiders themselves get trapped in them. He tells the goat to spread the cobwebs in the strategic locations he pointed out earlier. He hands him the bag of cobwebs and instructs him to. He waited for him outside, explaining that the boss room is much more filled with cobwebs than the rest of the dungeon. He believes they wouldn't stand a chance if they tried to fight in there, so it was essential to lure the enemies outside. The scene cuts back to the present. Sephir slips through the cobwebs. One of the spiders gets caught. He wields the weapon made from a spider's leg and thinks that only one more night spider is needed. He attacks with a precise blow. He has never been injured by anyone. Until now, his perfect record remained unbroken. She asks if he has any idea what a blow that was to Tartarus's pride. Soon after, he starts running, noticing the Spider Queen approaching. He runs toward the cavern entrance, certain that he is being chased. Goat urges him to hurry. The Spider Queen spits venom in his direction. He recognizes that the substance is highly corrosive, but what truly makes it terrifying is its hidden effect. He recalls that this poison carries a curse capable of nullifying any defensive or regenerative abilities. Humans with low stamina and little mana simply melt away before they even realize what hit them. The only way to escape is to avoid any contact with the substance. Faced with this, he jumps out of the cavern. The Spider Queen immediately follows, leaping out as well. He orders everyone to take their positions. The group prepares to attack while Sephir jumps, wielding his weapon, ready to face the creature. The queen tries to reach him, but he backs away and provokes her, saying that is ready to receive her. He decides to act as the team's tank, knowing he is the only one capable of facing the boss head-on. He remembers the moment in which he explained to the others that they should inflict as much damage as possible while he distracted the creature. The revelation surprised everyone. The goat, trembling, he holds his weapon tightly, wielding his spear. He is paralyzed by fear. His allies stand motionless, observing the creature in front of them. Looking at the enormous being, its overwhelming presence makes him feel like a far inferior existence. Thinking that he always avoided danger because he wonders if that's why Tartarus wants to bring him back, and Mercedes confirms it. Tartarus wants to face him again to restore his perfect score. Own safety always came first. The goat wonders how they could possibly defeat something like the Spider Queen. Dale remembers a painful memory when other members of the hunting team mocked them. One of them ordered them to prepare the food and clean the equipment. Another pointed their weapons, hesitating. Questioning their abilities, they asked if they really believed they were hunters like them. They mocked them, saying that since they didn't even fight, they had to find some way to be useful. Dale was tired of being treated as useless. Getting this far was already a sign that there was nothing more to fear. So, they could fight the Spider Queen, and he was preparing to attack. Marco reflects that, in the past, they never would have dreamed of facing a monster like that. But since Saphir's arrival, something had changed. Everything Saphir had said up until now had become true. Marco decides to trust him once more. Conviction encourages others by telling them that they can win. The goat, frustrated, thinks that nobody ever listens to her, even though she is the unit leader. But, if Dale and Marco are determined to fight, he has no other option but to join them. He aims for the part of the Spider Queen's armor that was destroyed by the explosion. He explains that beneath that tough armor, the flesh is soft. Marco asks if that's true, and then stabs her with a knife. Dale remembers when Saphir pointed out a specific place, instructing them to aim there. He said that point was a cluster of nerves that asks, "What does Saphir think about that?" He responds by asking if she is joking, because if Tartarus is so eager to die, he will gladly kill him. Passes right through the center of the leg. Dale coats his sword with a tranquilizer and cuts exactly in that spot. He smiles when he sees the blade. Walking in, he says, "Sweet." At that moment, the Spider Queen shoots webs all around him. He realizes there's no time to dodge, so he takes a great leap and attacks her forcefully. He provokes the spider, calling her an ugly insect, and throws several punches. Dale watches, surprised by Seph's strength. He blocks all of the Spider Queen's attacks, and Dale can barely keep up with his movements. He remembers when the goat commented that spiders weren't so strong, questioning whether Saphir was certain he wanted them to attack. The goat suggested that perhaps he should do it alone, but Saphir reassured them. He reassured them, saying everything would be fine. The Spider Queen would be furious that her eggs were burned and wouldn't notice what was happening behind her. Besides, the Queen's black steel spiders possessed an unusual characteristic. Once again, he was correct. 5 minutes of combat have already elapsed, and the Spider Queen, it has barely moved from its initial landing spot. It's explained that queens lay their eggs in confined nests, which is the reason they avoid using their hind legs. It is relatively safe to attack from behind. Aside from web attacks or stomping when jumping, they concentrate their attacks on the frontal area. The Queen attempts to catch up with Saphir as he retreats. He reflects that he learned these attack patterns by facing giant spiders in dungeons. Now, she then informs him that she will begin the process of sending him back. He will be sent to a random point in the past, but he will have the opportunity to gather all the strength he needs. She is being distracted. All that remains is to wait for the tranquilizer to take effect. The rest will simply be a matter of time. Marco prepares to attack with his hammer. He believes he can do it. The goat also stabs her with a spear and feels confident in himself. The Spider Queen lifts the goat up, still impaled on the spear, nailed to her. C-Tier watches as she throws him away, furious. The Queen shouts that she will never forgive them and calls them pathetic humans. She promises not only to crush them, but also to melt them with her venom. C-Tier activates his magical mana power and attacks her with his bare hands. He grabs the poison gland and thinks, here it is. He tears the gland from the spider's body. Hello everyone, did you enjoy the story? I certainly loved it. If you want to see the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. Additionally, the gods who support him will grant him some perks as gifts that can be unlocked as soon as he returns. It is implied that he doesn't like receiving gifts from those disgusting gods, but an opportunity is an opportunity. This is his chance to get revenge, not just on Tartarus, but on all the gods who treated humans like useless trash. Guinea pigs. Saphir, as the last survivor, continued this battle alone against the Demon King. Tartarus perceived his suffering. Mercedes mentions that the coordination was already defined, and only the god's final approval is needed to interfere with space-time. He concludes by wishing him good luck and hoping he puts on a good show for them. Then, he sends him back. After a while, Saphir opens his eyes and sees people gathered around him. Someone comments that he isn't breathing. Another person worries, saying that they are now in trouble. A third person tells them to be quiet and shouts at Saphir to wake up. They throw water on him, water on his head, and Saphir opens his eyes. Another person confirms that he opened his eyes and reassures the others, saying that he knew he wasn't dead. He wonders who those people are, as they seem familiar to him. He sees a tattoo and suddenly starts laughing. Someone comments that he is laughing. He realizes that it was sent 10 years into the past, when he was 20 years old and a slave in a temple. A bearded man approaches, asking what's going on. A man with yellow hair. Yellow replies that it's nothing. The bearded man declares that the break is over and orders everyone back to work. He warns Saphir that if he does something like that again, he'll be dead. Saphir responds with disdain. The yellow-haired man asks what he just said. A brown-haired man intervenes and suggests they should move on. Saphir thinks he doesn't have time to waste on those guys. A little boy thanks Saphir for protecting him. Saphir wonders who, and, with a certain disdain, cast a magic spell to capture him. He said he had granted him a little more life so they could converse. Then, it began. The child is. It's been 10 years, and he has forgotten many details. He realizes it's going to be annoying to get used to all of this again. He decides to move forward anyway, but he pauses to consider his options. He remembers that Mercedes told him he needs to unlock the perks to use them whenever he wants, or at least he thinks that's what she said. Mercedes told him. Then he turns around and sees the boy leaving in the opposite direction. He focuses and tells himself to unlock the perks. A magical power envelops him, and he's surprised to see the perks, thinking he can't believe what he received. After a while, a yellow-haired man comments that the rookie is really impressive. The man in the gray cap agrees, observing that he is a good worker and wondering if he has already had experience in mines before. They are both shocked to see Saphir digging so quickly. Another person also comments on his speed, while the man in yellow hair expresses his desire to have him on his team, complaining that the others can no longer relax because of him. Saphir wonders to himself if this is really happening, as he still can't believe it. The scene flashes back a bit to the moment when Saphir decides to unlock his perks. He is overwhelmed by an avalanche of information. Confused, he asks aloud what all of this is, while looking at super high-level skills and items, displayed in various status windows. He realizes that he's never had some of these abilities before, and is astonished by what he's been granted. To approach, observing that, of all humans, he had been his only problem. He remarked that his persistence was extraordinary. He stated that only the mining team leader arrives and calls out to him, reminding Saphir that he needs to get back to work. He asks if Saphir thinks he's going to go easy on him just because it's his first day. Upon seeing him, Saphir recognizes him as the head of the mining team and mutters that he's a lazy idiot who never listens, not even when you try to talk to him nicely. The man raises his whip, saying that this will teach him a lesson. Saphir instinctively grabs the whip with his hand, surprising himself. He wonders how he was able to do that, but he quickly bows and apologizes, saying that he will return to work. The head of the team, stunned, retreats. Saphir looks at his hand, surprised that he was able to grab the whip without a single scratch, relying on his combat experience. The system window displays the Iron Wall perk, which significantly increases his durability. It can nullify any minor damage and gets tired easily. Saphir realizes that he doesn't actually feel fatigue and can continue working all day, concluding that, although it's a little complicated to activate, that ability could be extremely useful. Not a bad first perk, he thinks. The scene returns to the present. It is determined that he received a total of 9 perks. If he combines that with what he knows about the future, he'll be back to his old self in no time. Someone calculates his performance in mining and is shocked by the results, congratulating him. After a while, all the slaves line up. Fools continued to fight a losing battle, but he also declared that those who immediately surrendered out of fear were not wise, but simply, person announces the end of the day's tally and reveals the ranking. Team F is in first place. The bow boy exclaims, "Sweet." Cephal realizes he didn't know the boy was on the same team as him. The announcer then states that Team B came in second place and Team H came in third. The others are ignored, and Team E is placed in last. The mining boss announces that, according to policy, the food and supplies of the team that came in last will be redistributed among the top 3 teams. He orders everyone to start praying to the great goddess of the area of light. The slaves pray, Almighty Goddess. Area. Redeem us with your eternal light. Set. This is reminiscent of the Temple of Ara, goddess of light, and the greatest religious and financial power in the world. A slave nearby says he is exhausted and just wants to sleep. Saphir thinks that many of them lost their homes because of monsters, or they were adventurers like him. After being taken in by the temple, they ended up as slaves because they were unable to pay the exorbitant medical bills. As long as the slave mark remains on his body, he will be trapped there. If he tries to leave without permission, his heart will stop, and he will die instantly. Saphir decides that he is going to pay off his debts and buy his freedom as soon as possible. This way, he can advance to the next stage of his plan, to confront Tartarus. He is determined not to be defeated, so easily this time, and to take revenge for everything Tartarus did to him. Remembering his past life, he vows that this time he will protect what he couldn't protect before. After some